The NCAA tournament is going to continue into the Sweet 16 tomorrow night. We have 4 games, and Friday night there are 4 more. There haven't been very many upsets in the NCAA tournament so far, but to me, that just makes for an amazing Sweet 16. It's true that we had a less exciting first and second round, you could say, because you didn't have any double-digit seeds besides Arkansas, which of course isn't really a Cinderella. You didn't have any Cinderella teams escape through the first and second rounds and into the second weekend. There's no 16 over ones. None of the 13 through 16 seeds won a game, right? And no 12 or 11 seeds snuck through to the second round. It wasn't that exciting in the first weekend for that reason. But to me, that just sets up for an absolute clash of titans game after game, week after week here in the Sweet 16, Elite 8, and Final 4. I have 4 storylines and one honorable mention at the end that I think are the most exciting and most followable storylines in the Sweet 16. These are the 4 storylines that I want you to watch. The first one is about 1 seed survival, right? The question of how long do all number 1 seeds remain intact, and can they all make it to the Elite 8? Will they all win on Thursday and Friday? This is a big one, right? Because in most years, we see in the last 5 years, we've seen 2 1 seeds fall in the first round. Many times, it's certainly not uncommon to see a 1 seed lose in the second. And it's, by the way, not at all uncommon to see all 4 1 seeds make the Sweet 16. But the story of the tournament so far is that there haven't been very many upsets so far. All the 1 seeds are, of course, intact in the Sweet 16. And that's kind of what I want to point out. That's what I think is most interesting right now is how long do these 1 seeds survive? Because you would say, right, common sense could think that all 1 seeds won't make it through to the Elite 8, right? The tournament's way crazier than that. There's no way that we'll see all 4 1 seeds get to the Elite 8, and certainly not the Final 4. But look at these teams, right? Look at these games. You would think that, no, like I said, not all of them are going to get to the Elite 8, but Florida's against Maryland. And by the way, I love Maryland. I think they're awesome. I think that's the best game of the whole round. But Florida's won the SEC, the toughest league in probably the history of the sport, and they've been playing great basketball week after week, just got past UConn. Florida, do you really think they're going to lose this early? Many people have them as their champion. I would think not. Auburn's against Michigan. Do you really think Michigan is the team that's going to be upsetting Auburn and who is probably going to be the National Player of the Year in Janai Broome? Houston's against Purdue. Same thing. We just talked earlier in the show about how great Houston is. Do you really think they're going to lose this early? Duke is against Arizona. Yeah, Arizona has Caleb Love, but is Cooper Flagg really going to lose this early? When you look at these 1 seeds, and I know this is how upsets work, and you never expect it, and it comes out of nowhere all the time, but when you look at these 1 seeds and their matchups, you kind of start to realize that individually you wouldn't be surprised if none of these teams lose, and then you find yourself with 4 1 seeds in the Elite 8, right? None of those teams, Maryland, Michigan, Purdue, or Arizona, feel like bona fide upset Sweet 16 picks, right? Purdue was picked by many to lose earlier than this. Michigan, same situation, right? Maryland just snuck by Colorado State. Again, I still think Maryland's awesome, and we'll talk about them later on in the show. Arizona, it hasn't been a story for most of the year, right? This doesn't feel like some underseeded 4 seed is going to come in and shock the world and knock off a 1. That's not what it feels like to me. So half of these games, when we get to the Sweet 16, involve 1 seeds. I wouldn't be surprised if the favorite wins in each and every one of them. But that's the question, because at the end of the day, I have no idea, right? Maryland's awesome, in my opinion. Purdue, obviously, great coaching, great star power there. Caleb Love has knocked off Duke before, right, in an upset in 2022 in the Final 4. Michigan, Dusty May's awesome. Michigan's built really well. They won the Big Ten. Absolutely. Any one of these teams, all of these teams, could win their games in the Sweet 16. But that's the question. That's the storyline, right? Do all 1 seeds survive? How long do all 1 seeds survive? Do they make it past the first day, right? How does this go? Do all of them win and go to the Elite 8? I'm interested to see because, again, it's been a while since we've had a tournament where all 4 1 seeds are in the Sweet 16. Let's see if they can take it any further. That's my number 1 storyline for the round as a whole. Now, I'm singling out one of those games, and it's Duke versus Arizona. This is my second storyline. It's Caleb Love versus Duke. We know Caleb Love iced Duke. He put him away with a tough 3 in the last 10 seconds and then some free throws. In the Final Four in 2021-22, he walked off Coach K. Caleb Love did all that at North Carolina, which was the craziest part. Of course, arch rivals. Now he's on Arizona. right? And this is an Arizona team that has sort of quietly performed well in the Big 12, we should say. Quietly been great. They're quietly awesome. They're, of course, in the Sweet 16. They're a 4 seed. They just knocked off Oregon in the late game in the second round. Oregon, a tough out from the Big 10. Arizona's now here in the Sweet 16. They're taking on Duke. Duke does not have Coach K, and they're led by a freshman in Cooper Flagg. Now, that is a very disrespectful way to word what I just said. It's very disrespectful of me to say that, to describe Duke as Coach K-less and led by a freshman, because Duke is awesome, right? Cooper Flagg is awesome. Duke has still been awesome despite not having Coach K at the head of the program anymore. But like I said, Arizona's playing great basketball. They just took out Oregon. This could be the most likely 1 seed to fall. Now, I'm not going to make any predictions like that. I really don't know. It's the NCAA tournament. But look out for Caleb Love having a menacing performance in this game against Duke, right? Look out for Caleb Love to be awesome. And that's what I'm most excited to see between Arizona and Duke. It's really the individual matchup of Caleb Love versus Duke, because Duke's best player, Cooper Flagg, is a more sizable guy, and Caleb is a bit more of a shiftier sharpshooter guard. It's different skill sets between Flagg and Love. So does Caleb Love kill Duke from around the 3? We know Caleb Love's inconsistent. He has bad moments. He misses big shots, but he makes big shots sometimes too, and he did, of course, in that Final Four game against Duke a couple years ago. North Carolina marched to a loss to Kansas in the national championship game. Arizona has an opportunity to extend their road to the Final Four with a victory over Duke, and if they're going to do so, they're going to need Caleb Love to be awesome, and he has to be fired up for another game against Duke in his career. That's my number 2 storyline. It's Caleb Love versus Duke. Number 3 is sort of the ideological clash and its proxy war, right? The ideological clash is SEC versus Big Ten. What's the best conference in the country? Well, it's the SEC. Of course, the SEC deeper. The top of the SEC is better. The middle of the SEC is better. The bottom of the SEC is better. The SEC, best conference in the country by far, maybe one of the best conferences, if not the best conference in the history of college basketball. This year's SEC, it's been awesome, right? And there are 7 SEC teams in the Sweet 16. And on the flip side, you've got the Big Ten, also a very important power conference, right? Very important to the history of the sport. However, you look at the Big Ten and you see a conference that hasn't won a championship in 25 years, right? Certainly has struggled in the last 5 years in the tournament. Many of these teams, very hyped up heading in and then putting up lackluster performances. There's a lot of Big Ten doubt. There's a lot of Big Ten hate. And there's a lot of SEC. There's a very strong propping up of the SEC in terms of basketball, knowing how great their season has been. And I think that's true. Right? I think the SEC has been this good, and it's evidenced by the fact that they have 7 teams in the Sweet 16. There are 4 teams in the Big Ten left. Now, there are 3 meetings between these 2 conferences in this round, right? Auburn, number 1 seed Auburn, plays number 5 seed Michigan. Number 2 seed Michigan State plays a 6 seed in Ole Miss. And I am neglecting to remember the other one. As I rack my brain here, it's not Alabama, it's not Tennessee or Kentucky. There's another one. I promise you. It'll come to me. We'll let it go for now. But that was it. It was Auburn, Michigan, and then we have Michigan State and Ole Miss. So Big Ten and the SEC, they play each other 3 times. The Big Ten has an opportunity to even the score. I don't think that really matters. I think the SEC will have more teams in the tournament, remaining in the tournament each round we go. They're up 7-4 in the Sweet 16. I think they'll be ahead again in the Elite 8. I think there'll be more SEC representation than Big Ten representation when we get to the Final Four. Florida, Maryland is the other one. So Auburn plays Michigan, Florida plays Maryland, and Michigan State plays Ole Miss. The SEC is the higher seeded team in 2 out of those 3 games. So this SEC versus Big Ten, right? The question, kind of the battle between the top 2 conferences in the sport, and the proxy war is Tom Izzo versus Chris Beard, 2 of the best coaches in the sport. It's Michigan State versus Ole Miss, right? This is awesome to me because Ole Miss kind of not really a plucky underdog, but they are, right? 6 seed in the Sweet 16. You don't anticipate that. If they win this game, absolutely. Plucky underdog SEC team. Chris Beard, phenomenal coach. It's another major coaching battle. We've had multiple big-time clashes between coaches so far this tournament. It's Chris Beard's career redemption, right? After he, of course, had the off-the-court disaster and now ends up at Ole Miss. He's kind of reviving his career. And Tom Izzo's on his last run, right? He's trying to, for the Big Ten, for Michigan State, for himself, trying to win one more title before he retires, and we don't know when he's going to retire, but this very well may be his best shot to win a championship if he's going to this year. And Chris Beard has the opportunity to be the villain, march in with his Ole Miss Rebels, random like football school, right? Football school, SEC team, come in and knock off Michigan State. That's what Chris Beard has the opportunity to do. And if that happens, that would be a major indicator of the paradigm shift and the power shift in college basketball, where the SEC says, watch this, we're taking the crown. And I don't think the Big Ten had the crown before the SEC became this good anyway. I think the Big 12 did. I think the Big East had some moments as well. Big Ten hasn't had the tournament success to be the crown of the conferences in college basketball, but Tom Izzo, face of the sport, and now you have Chris Beard and Ole Miss coming in looking for an opportunity to knock off Michigan State in what may be Tom Izzo's best chance to have one less championship on his resume. That's the proxy war of the ideological clash between the SEC and the Big Ten. That's the way I'm kind of describing it. It's Ole Miss and Michigan State. It's Chris Beard versus Tom Izzo. It's the SEC versus the Big Ten. There's plenty of SEC versus Big Ten storylines across the 3 games. That's my favorite one, is the coaching battle between those 2 teams and between those 2 coaches. That's what I'm most excited to watch play out. And across the board, it's just what happens in these SEC versus Big Ten games and how many teams from each conference are left once we roll into Saturday, and more importantly, once we run into the Final Four. My number 4 favorite storyline is John Calipari's revenge tour, right? This is fun. This is interesting. 10 seed. The last double-digit seed left is Arkansas. John Calipari, after being run out of Lexington and starting 0-5 in the SEC with Arkansas, is now in the Sweet 16, still dancing, looking for an opportunity to knock off Texas Tech and move into the Elite Eight. The side question here is, can they outlast Kentucky? Right? Because Arkansas and Kentucky both in the Sweet 16. Kentucky takes on Tennessee on Friday. Arkansas does the same against Texas Tech. They play in the late window on Thursday. So Arkansas and Kentucky, do they keep dancing? Which one? Is it only one of them? Which one is it? Right? Did both of them lose? Can John Calipari outlast Kentucky while coaching Arkansas? It doesn't mean a lot, but it would be fun and interesting to me. It'd be fun if Arkansas knocked out Texas Tech and kept this double-digit seed run going into the Elite Eight. Texas Tech is great, but Arkansas did just beat St. John's, right? And St. John's didn't play particularly well, but anything is possible in the NCAA tournament, especially when your coach is John Calipari, and there might be another Final Four run in Calipari. It's absolutely could still be in the cards, and it could happen this year. It starts against Texas Tech, or it continues, rather, against Texas Tech. Arkansas knocked off Calipari in coaching battles, right? Knocked off Bill Self and Rick Pitino in the same weekends, right? Upset Kansas in terms of seeding and upset St. John's in the same weekend. And now they're in position to do the same against Texas Tech, a team that's a little bit more new to the forefront of the sport. Of course, they went to the championship under Chris Beard in 2019, but they didn't quite have the guns to keep up with Virginia. Texas Tech's getting used to being a top 4 seed in the tournament, and Arkansas has an opportunity to spoil their first run, their first second weekend run in a few years. I'm excited to see how much further Arkansas goes. I'm excited to see how much further John Calipari can take this team. That's my 4th storyline. The honorable mention is just that Florida versus Maryland is an awesome game. It's going to be 2 great offenses. Derek Queen's fabulous. He's playing his best basketball ever. Florida's been playing their best basketball ever under Todd Golden. I think that game's just awesome. It's in the first window on Thursday. I think it's on TBS, actually. Somehow, shockingly, it's a TBS game. Florida-Maryland is going to be absolutely fantastic. That's my honorable mention. There's not really a storyline with that I wanted to single out. It's just 2 great offenses. It's 2 great teams. Very, very reasonably, either one of those teams could win the national championship. And I just love Derek Queen and Maryland that much. I might be a Big Ten homer, but I love Florida. I love watching Florida. I love watching Maryland. That is going to be a wonderful matchup tomorrow night to kick off the weekend. It's going to be a great round. It's going to be a spectacular end to the tournament. I'm very, very excited to watch it all play out, and those are my 4 storylines to follow the most.